One second. अम्मा मैंने बताया था मैं अभी podcast कर रहा हूँ. Alright, sorry I had to cut you off with that. Repeat that.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dennis Semsey.
And I'm Sam Hornberger.
For this episode, we sat down and spoke with an agnostic who was raised Muslim among the cornfields of Pennsylvania. You are listening to the No Faith in Humanity podcast, the podcast about...
This is the ultimate question, right? How can you feel fulfilled?
Hello again and welcome to the No Faith in Humanity podcast. This is Dennis. Each episode we will sit down and talk to someone about their faith journey and what they do to find fulfillment in everyday life. What brings me to create this podcast is that I want to understand what component of religion or spirituality I've missed or not understood, whatever the thing that's been holding me back. I grew up in an active Lutheran family myself, and I can say that there's something to living life by faith. Having what Christians call an on fire for God family, I saw firsthand how religion can fill people with passion and peace in hard times. That hasn't been my experience, though. Co-hosting with me is Sam, a friend I've had throughout my faith journey that comes to this from a slightly different perspective. Sam?
Hi there, and not totally different. The early footprints of our spirituality are identical in most places, I'd say. As regards family and upbringing, we're fairly alike. My parents were Christian and church held life's routine in place. I wanted that to always be the case, I guess, so I went to Bible school, and then I burned out, and then I dropped out. And since then, my faith has remained, gone through its own phase of self-inflicted spiritual embarrassment, changed and grown. But talking about faith and spirituality has long been my favorite thing to do with Dennis, and I look forward to you, our listeners, and future guests joining us to do so.
Just a heads up, if you have some little ears in the room, or maybe you're at work and you have some big ears in the room, or little ears, I don't know, I don't work with you. But this podcast does contain a few curse words, so you may want to listen to this when you have a little bit more privacy. Also, heads up, this podcast is broken up into sections. Each section consists of a part of the interview with David, followed by a discussion Sam and I had together about the topics that were brought up during that section of interview. So that there's no confusion, we broke up the interview and discussion parts by short instrumental interludes. Alright, hope you enjoy.
Okay, so we are picking up the interview asking David about what kind of role his parents played in his faith.
It was a combination of both. Well, for one thing, as growing up as just a child, religion was always a discussion topic in the household. Before I was born, my father was actually a religious debater, so it's very much in his head to speak about these things whenever he has something in his head about religion, like for or against any particular belief. Because you can consider that even within Islam, there's tons of arguments about what is right, what is wrong, just like any other faith, interpretation-wise. Then in Pakistan, religion was actually, or Islam in particular, is a school subject. So I had to study that in school, in class. And then as soon as I came back to Pennsylvania, I had Sunday school, I had youth group at the masjid, I became religious, my father had more time, so we were constantly arguing religious philosophies with each other about what we thought was the right way to do things, what was the accurate interpretation, whether God would prefer this or that, etc.
And that was obviously very important to you. Did your father provide similar counsel when you were beginning to have doubts within the faith?
One of the most, memorable conversations I had with my father, which was one where he actually played the devil's advocate in me switching over to the other side, actually, was he said that God loves you more than your mother ever could. He says this himself all the time. But would a mother ever, no matter how bad her son was, take her child and put it on top of the stove and turn the stove on? I thought, no, of course not. But God's gonna throw other people in hell. He says it. And I guess that was one of the conversations we had at my tipping point.
We're definitely going to get more into your transition and what made you kind of tip over in a little bit. But first, you said that when you were in Pakistan, your whole life was kind of surrounded by the religion, revolved around the religion. It was even taught in school. So when you came back to the States, were you still just as involved in religious activities?
I became so involved. Part of it was, for sure, that I had a very strong mentor at the mosque. So with him, I memorized the Quran. He would bring together all the young adults of my age and below, and of course there'd be activities, both religious and non-religious. So really drilled it into my brain.
So wait. You said that you memorized the Quran, like the whole Quran. I know Sam and I, we went to this Christian camp called Deerfoot, and there was this thing called the 3012. And Sam, I don't know, Sam, did you ever do the 3012? You did, okay. So the whole idea was that you did 3,000 push-ups over a course of 10 days. You're supposed to memorize 12 Bible verses. I do not even remember which Bible verses I was supposed to remember. I can't even tell, like, I couldn't even give you a book of the Bible that the Bible verses were in. That's how bad it is. But the look on Sam's face and the way that his body is reacting tells me that he feels the same way. So the idea of memorizing the Quran is like so foreign to us.
To be fair, though, Islam does have a bit of a tradition with memorizing the Quran. There's a little bit of, I suppose, history to it. Muhammad himself is supposedly illiterate. So that's one aspect. And one major concept in Islam is that God had sent many messengers in the past. Muhammad was just one of the messengers and the last one. But over time, the books of the previous messengers were distorted. They had changed, people rewrote different parts, etc. And so the idea was, in the beginning, you need to get everybody, or as many people as you can, to memorize it, and other people to write it down. So if enough people have it in their heads, there's no way it'll change. Well, that's the concept.
Outside of overt religious practice, what did this faith actually look like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Probably every moment of my life was related to God. I had a Quran with me at all times. In Islam, the whole idea is to make it your way of life. So in every action, you should be thinking of God with your action. Why do you pick up your pen? You're writing your pen to take notes, to learn about the glory of the world that God has created, to praise Him in that way. And everything was in that nature, in that mindset.
I think really the bulk of it was towards the end when you beautifully said that, like, I don't know, maybe it's just the way that he says things like so poetically and stuff that it makes me like, I don't know if I'm attracted to, I don't know. I feel like he could make anything sound so beautiful. Just the way that he says, he's like, yeah, you know, everything was devoted to everyday life was devoted. You know, you pick up your pen, you're taking notes to, you know, the beauty of the world that God created. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe have you ever been at that point where you were consciously doing that? It seems like when he was talking about it, it was a conscious thing. Not that, like, oh, I'm going back in time and I'm applying, you know, these principles to what I was doing. It seems like it was like an active part of his mindset day to day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that relates a lot to just the strength of somebody's spiritual imagination. Like, because religious activities are different than being a religious person. And so what you're seeing here and Dower talking about, every moment was something that in my mind I related to the worship of God. That's spiritual imagination at work, the ability to see and instantly interpret and reinterpret and do all of that through the lens of your faith. I think I did that at some points, but it wasn't ever like picking up my pen to take notes about the glory of God's creation. It was more just walking through the woods and thinking about creation from a from a spiritual perspective and then my place within it, and that makes that moment a spiritual moment. That moment in the woods, that's suddenly a very profound spiritual thing that's taking place. But it's just, like me, and I'm a Christian, so it probably wouldn't sound like much, but to re-envision the world around you from like the worldview of a religion, I think is actually like a major feat of the imagination. It's not just
imagination. When you use imagination, I think that it's like
I think of like the word imagination, or I talk about imagination as if it's a muscle.
Okay.
I view it as something that's neither like good nor evil, real or unreal.
Okay.
It's a way to like focus the mind on
it's like a meditation
on certain things.
That's what meditation is, right?
Well, meditation is focusing the mind.
Yeah. And when you say when
clearing the mind.
Yeah. When you make the distinction religious person and religious activity, so like just because you go to church, which is I go to church, it's a religious activity, but I'm not considered a religious person. The idea that a religious person is like he's making an intention to include his religion, his God into every part of his life.
His mind, it's how he thinks now.
Yeah,
it's how he thinks.
It's a total worldview. It's the lens at which he views the world.
And so you were like a very active Christian. I taught Bible classes with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so you were doing all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But
I didn't get the religious. I feel like the religious person. Like I can say
you never felt like it was a core thing. You felt like it was external stuff, from what I get.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It wasn't a core thing. Now, not saying that I was like disingenuous about any of my actions. No, I really truly, when I was teaching something, I really truly believed in the power of what I was teaching, even though I didn't necessarily feel it. If that makes any sense, like, and yeah, I feel like I can honestly say that I do these, or I still do these religious activities, but I never felt like I definitely never had an experience like I did, where it's like, I never had that conscious taking notes, or even like.
Really, but you've never walked through the woods at Deerfoot and thought,
I was about
this
to
was made for me.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I've been in the awe of the beauty of nature, without a doubt. I mean, I've been with you. I mean, I've been on hikes. It's like, and I feel like when someone sits in awe, it's like, wow, this is a beautiful thing. I can appreciate it. It wells up emotion in me, but I never applied it to, God loves me so much, he created this for me to enjoy, or like, like worshiping him through this, or like seeing God. Maybe I look back on it now and I write them off as awe moments. Like, yes, these like inspiring moments, but not necessarily like, even though maybe at the time I attribute it to God, just like I feel like in a lot of cases with worship music, people will attribute worshiping and feeling God, but really they're probably feeling the drums and the electric guitar and stuff, and like that pulling emotion out. So I think I fell into that trap a lot, or maybe that's just a pessimistic view. Maybe God was knocking on my heart and I just like have written off beautiful connections with God that I've had in my life, and I'm just like writing them off, which is a shame. All right, David, I want to kind of talk a little bit about your transition out of Islam. To start, would you say that your decision to leave Islam, was it a sudden change, like something kind of catastrophic happened that just shook you to the core? Or was it more of kind of a welling up of questions and doubts that just gradually chipped away at you until, you hit a breaking point?
Yeah, it was a pretty sudden change, to be honest. So, since I didn't exactly change to not believing in God, but to just not agreeing with him, it was more of a feeling of loving God, but then not understanding why he would do something, and then like a feeling of betrayal growing, but still wanting to believe that he's still alright. Maybe he has a better reason for this. So, basically, it happened when I was 16, which is already kind of a troublesome age. And so I was focusing a lot on what's not right with the world, like genocides, world hunger. then on top of that, I had a lot going on in my life. My best friend had brain cancer. Another friend's mom died of an aneurysm, and lots of people were passing, really. And then there was all these world problems. So while I still believed in God, I had so much spite and I just got angry, and I couldn't reconcile with just enjoying God's gifts and being good to get his heaven. So in a way, it was kind of like a dumb teen angsty protest. I thought I'd rather just go to hell instead of accepting what this guy is telling me.
That's a pretty serious decision for a kid to make.
Well, as a teenager, I thought I would just stay that way forever and, go to hell.
But this change was sincere.
I had the upsetness welling up for quite a long time. It just reached the tipping point. Another person passed. I thought, well, this is not how the world should be. That's really not it. I was just upset.
So it seems like that was the tipping point. Were there a lot of significant changes that came after that for you?
So at that same time, I got a job, I got a car, smoked pot all day, drank all day, and was never home, ever. So it made it pretty hard on their end to really do anything about it. Of course, there were arguments quite often, like some yelling whenever I did come around.
What do you think your parents were more concerned about, your erratic behavior or this change in your faith?
Both. Mostly faith, though, because the thing is, those other things were really just as a consequence of me being pissed off about faith.
From what I understand, you'd been a bit of a child preacher.
I gave many sermons, so yeah, it was a bit of a 180.
I just want to go back for a moment and kind of talk about what you said about how one of the more prominent parts of your transition was the fact that you were having some major issues with the way God was running the world and how kind of crappy the world is. And I can definitely relate with you on that. I had very similar problems. And even in the Bible, it seems that God blesses the full destruction of, tribes, countries, nations, and we have a word for that now, and that word's genocide. But to me, it sounds like that was a really personal, deep struggle part of your transition, and I'm just curious about another angle of your transition that I found was very significant for me. It was definitely played a major role for me. Culturally, I found that my entire life was kind of built around the church. All my activities, my schedule, most of my friends were made through the church, and and Sam, right here, he's one of those friends. Friend. I'm using friend loosely, but I'm just kidding. but I definitely built my entire world around the church, and I was just really kind of obsessed when I started having these problems and having struggles with it, because I was worried about what my friends would think of me, what my mentors would think of me, what even my parents would think of me, and how they would react and everything. So I don't know if you can relate on a cultural level, if that was like an aspect or a level of your transition.
Mm-hmm. Well, don't get me wrong, there were cultural aspects as well. I didn't want to lose the relationships I had built up, and they were good relationships. But ultimately, the actual core belief change was personal, and the announcing it part was more social.
Does that mean that there were a lot of conversations that you had with people you'd been close to?
No, I announced it with my actions, but it was clear enough.
I take this as you're beginning to break away from your religious peer group.
Exactly. And I felt like other people were sellouts for just trying to take his message and dealing with it. So there was that, and then, of course, losing some friends at the same time.
And I guess in the social isolation that would kind of come with that for somebody that was as involved in the faith as you were, what was it like being on your own now, or relatively so? How'd you feel?
Miserable and scared. And miserable for multiple reasons. It wasn't purely religious, so to say. So there was the fear of, like, well, I guess I'm accepted going to hell. This is gonna suck so much. That was one aspect. No, that's what I thought. Right.
See, I'm interested in, finding out, like, what was the big struggle for you? Was it stuff going on in the world?
It was
I remember,
yeah.
I was doing Bible studies with you, and so we had, like, topics, I guess, that we were focusing on, like, at one time would be prayer, another time would be hell, another time would be free will, and I know when I was preparing for those lessons, that's, I guess, spiritually, what I was more focused on at the time. I always tended to kind of teach out of my personal interest.
Yeah, definitely.
But so would you say that as you were going through these things, were any of these things during that period of guys group that I'm recalling? Like
no.
When did they really come in then, I guess?
Yeah, I feel like I think it was like probably when I was 22. I feel like what I said, these things were kind of going through my head a lot. I think 22 was when I really started trying on the clothes of being an agnostic for the first, and I felt like that's when I like started like kind of more giving more attention to my thoughts. Because a lot of times I was just like, when I would have these thoughts and stuff that he was struggling with, and like stuff that I mentioned that I was struggling with, like the idea that God, was slaughtering mass amounts of people, and that people are still being slaughtered, and dealing with that, and also with just never really feeling connected with God, like just like, or having trouble really connecting with him. When I was going through all that, I just kind of shut it off and was like, there are people smarter out there that are believers that have answers to these questions that I have, that I'll just find one day. Like, these questions are okay for me to have. Like, I never was too concerned about it because I just thought, there's someone smart out there. I'm not the first person to think up these questions. Like, someone has an answer for me that I'm going to be able to accept and, like, be able to integrate into my Christianity so that it works, like a puzzle piece. Like, like all the answers I've been getting, because I've asked people these questions, like, they just didn't fit. So but I was like, there's got to be someone out there that has this answer. And I think that around 22, and that was like when I started going to Savior Community Church, and the pastor there, Pastor Frank, was amazing, as you know, because you were there. He's fantastic. All the people that went there was fantastic. The church was fantastic. And even through that, even with someone who was really great, though, someone who could really answer my questions, and was really like thoughtful about it. Really, he was really relatable on so many levels.
I found him very easy to talk to.
Oh, incredibly, and really wise and like knowledgeable about stuff.
He's the kind of person where you feel like he's instantly on your side.
Oh, absolutely, which is super helpful. but still, like, those feelings just like never really left, and they just kind of started building and building and building until like I just kind of realized that I was, I don't know, going through the motions there. That like, I was present but not like present in the thing. And the thing that's really shitty about it is like, I don't know, I feel like I wore the mask like of Christianity really well. Like, it was like nobody really questioned it, it's and that's wrong, because I should have been talking to people about it, so it's partially my fault, but it's still like I don't know.
It goes to show you, though, that if you are a Christian in church in your 20s, there's plenty chance you can be doubting and continuing to carry the mask of Christianity and be in the very boat that you're describing. And my suggestion, if
anybody out there listening is going through that, talk to someone about it. I don't know, my transition, I feel like, was, I don't know, not so sudden, and so, which for him it seemed like there was things welling up, but then it really took a turn. I feel like he's an intellectual guy, he's a smart dude, I think he's a thinker too. I think he's a very deep thinker. He definitely is a very deep thinker. Not only about like neuroscience stuff, which is like, already like such a heavy weighted subject, but also philosophical stuff. And I feel like neuroscience is a harder science, whereas philosophy is a little bit of a softer kind of science. But I don't. You know what I mean? It's like. I don't know. I feel like neuroscience. It's like this is pieces of the brain.
Empirical science versus yeah.
And philosophy is like more
philosophy, argument, reason, logic.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are things that Dower is still passionate about. And I think what's interesting about Dower is he's interested in what connects the meaningless to the meaningful, and that's kind of what he talks about in his pursuit of truth in neuroscience, is finding out where does feeling occur, where does it go from matter to feeling to thought, and what he says about matter being potentially capable of feeling, albeit not quite thinking.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And like I love his like, I don't know, I feel like if I was oh sorry, yeah, you're right. I feel like if I was an omnipotent God, like especially like a Christian God, where Christians believe that God came to earth, like Jesus was literally God. I don't know, I feel like I would be able to empathize a lot with Dower and what he's feeling, what he's thinking. Like I feel like any God can't hold these things against someone. I don't know, I feel like
no, I agree with that too. There are things that, because you really do, what you do as a human is you come up with an excuse for this divine creature that has permitted the execution of thousands of other humans. Sometimes, commanded it.
Yeah.
And the thing with excuses are, if you come up with one, it works, he is actually excused. And I think what you're describing was the trouble that one thing that you described earlier, at least, was the trouble you were having with other people's excuses for God, where their explanations of why you should be okay with a God killing X many people in the Bible was yada yada yada, but that didn't ring true enough for you to excuse them. And, that feeling of like there's still an outstanding wrong.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, I'm like holding. If God's I'm holding God accountable to certain things, which is like I never even thought about it like that. It's like, man, I sound so like it's almost like such an arrogant thing for me to do. But it's also like I see it as wrong. Like I see it as something wrong. Like I don't know.
But here's the thing: what if lives are meaningless? And what if this God is actually the only thing that really does have meaning? He could appear as a huge ball of fire and be like, any polls that disagree with me are fake news. And like burn you to a crisp. And then you won't be there to say anything about it. It's like that's the all-powerful God thing is scary because it's really the dilemma. If he is powerful enough to do that, then why isn't he, going and stopping horrible atrocities?
Exactly, yeah.
He's an all-powerful God. He wanted the Jews to go into a certain city. He literally could have picked everybody and their building up out of the ground and put them down in the middle of America, where there weren't even any Indians that they would disturb.
Yeah.
Or Native Americans, mind you.
Yeah.
He could have set any of those cities that he destroyed down on the other side of the planet because he's all-powerful. But he chose to instead have people walk into them and kill everyone. That would be an easier thing for an all-powerful God to do.
Would to set them in like a place where
it's easier for an all-powerful God to have people kill others than to somehow move those people peacefully.
You think it's easier?
No, I'm asking rhetorically. It's clearly
no, it can't be
either
easier.
one is easier.
Yeah, exactly.
Both are the same level of difficulty. But
one of the core beliefs of Christianity and teachings of Christianity is forgiveness. And actually, I think it's probably one of the most important aspects of it, because the idea is that no matter what you've done, God will still forgive you. And I think people draw a lot of peace from that no matter what they've done, no matter what their past looks like, they can still receive forgiveness. Did you get similar feelings from the concept of forgiveness in Islam?
Forgiveness, super easy. Had all of it. Maybe too much of it, even.
So it sounds like you're all set then, forgiven and good to go.
Sort of, but it's more about always making sure you improve yourself and do what God says. So even if you make a mistake, you're human. That's okay. You don't have to beg for that. Because also there's no concept of original sin or anything of that nature. It's clean slate for everyone. And God will forgive more than He'll punish.
It is reassuring to know that Allah recognizes that you're a human and you can make mistakes, and it's definitely something that like he doesn't necessarily hold it against you. And at the time, you obviously believed that. What did believing that feel like?
A constant feeling of being at peace, in a good way, like a constant feeling of being at peace at the time. Now things are very different.
Forgiveness is something that seemingly all religions have something to say about, and if you subscribe to one of those religions, you're pretty much bound to treat the subject as they teach it. Now, without a God to forgive you and give you a set of rules for forgiveness after you'd become agnostic, since then, have you been unable to forgive yourself?
In a way. Well, so how should I put this? Well, sometimes I will end up ruminating on failures and mistakes too much, or maybe get too much anxiety to do anything, which can be self-defeating. I try not to feel better about things I'm upset about until I've actually changed enough that it won't happen again. And even once I think I've changed enough that it won't happen again, I make it a point not to feel completely better. Because in my mind, the awareness of failure is what teaches me, changes me, and hopefully prevents me from repeating my mistakes. Like, if I stop feeling anything when I remember that, then I am who I was before that ever happened. So I keep it present in my mind, and I have faith that this is the way I'll need to grow as a human. If I consider my brain being composed of many different parts, one part being a piece that can think in words and logic, that's the part I usually consider to be me, really. Well, I want really that to have the most control over my actions, ultimately. And so, by using that the most, strengthening all my behaviors and thoughts in there versus letting the other parts take over, well, then I feel like my body can be me and not just that small part of my brain.
Because it seemed like, he said that he was at peace, a constant feeling of peace. So he had that. He had what I wanted. Because he talked about it. So obviously he understood how it worked. But he really felt like he would leave that, which was very bizarre to me. It was, for me, I'm searching for that peace. I'm searching for that, just that calmness in my life, which I don't have. I feel like my life is a constant, I shouldn't say constant, but as you know, as someone who's like, you know that I struggle deeply with anxieties and OCD and just like things that really plague me. So I find like I'm very prone to having my, the brain waves being like really rocky half the time. They're like super rocky, the waves. And I don't know. So I'm searching for that peace, and he had it. It was like he had this gift, but then he left it. So maybe, I don't know. It just seemed very confusing to me that he just like.
I think it makes sense to me that, well, when I hear about what leaving for him was like, it makes sense to me that he was actually leaving something good. Like, when he relayed the story of what his, I guess, transition into anger toward God looked like, because that's how his agnosticism began. It sounded like a good relationship was ending, and that made me believe that he probably had a long history of feeling positive benefits from, his relationship with God.
So why would it make sense for him to leave, though?
No, it doesn't make sense for him to. Well, because those things weren't enough. He says, as he says, it wasn't. Or he didn't feel like he could do God's good works in order to receive his heaven.
When all this bad stuff, it's like I'm praising someone who's allowing these bad things to happen.
Yeah.
And he just didn't feel comfortable. But he had...
So he was coming from the good world. You know, it almost reminds me of, what's that short story about the city there's this city, and in it everybody has ultimate pleasure and bliss, and they're happy constantly. But in order for them to be happy, somebody needs to be suffering in a room in a basement within the city. And this person is just in their own shit and feces all day long.
I have not heard of this story.
And everybody else in the city is joyous and happy and has access to this beverage that is like a narcotic drug. And but that can only be maintained if there's somebody suffering. And so I think Dower kind of came from a rather utopian world where religion was actually working for him. I think being somebody, perhaps you being somebody, we both look at religion with a bit of envy when we see it working for the people that follow it.
Yeah.
You being an agnostic and me being a Christian, both feeling a level of discontent with where we are spiritually and our experience of life as it relates to our faith. Yeah, I think it's easy for us to look at past religious experiences with envy because he really did appear to get it right by all means, and it was a very strange thing that pulled him away from the faith, I feel like.
It's a really strange thing?
Perhaps not strange, but where I think a common narrative for us to hear and accept is usually just, I started seeing through things, I became wiser, I found science. I started paying attention to the science I've been taught all my life through school and realized that maybe bread wasn't actually multiplied to feed 3,000 people.
Actually, science found me.
Science found you. I don't think people like us would be caught off guard by hearing that somebody lost their faith in God due to perhaps a more rationalized mind, becoming jaded with religion, seeing prayer that doesn't work, and
you feel like
belief that the only thing that you can do to change the world is to act in the material and not in the spiritual, but in the world of science and physics, and not in the world of prayer and meditation.
And you feel like that applies to
David? I feel like
David?
that story is easy for us to understand because that's a very common story, that you just don't believe anymore. But then you get somebody like who believed until the very end and ended up saying, this God is just not for me. This is too wrong, and I can't be a part of this anymore. And that's how he left, and then I think just in the absence of that spiritual, narrative, that worldview of Islam that had been provided to him, or that he had built within himself in those early years, just that being inactive for so long eventually brought him to this agnosticism, perhaps. I feel like what probably happened is just came to a point where he said, I can no longer accept these good things that I've been receiving in light of my feelings about this.
So he's almost like someone who goes into I'm going to use this example. Someone who goes into the Peace Corps and is like, I cannot accept all the benefits that I have in this world right now, so I'm going to go and live in a third world country for years. I'm going to sacrifice this kind of thing, all these benefits. Or maybe a missionary does that.
No, because I think kind of part of the crisis that goes through is he might see that he isn't capable of solving all of these problems, because he talks about God in a way, he says he loves God, and he talks about wanting to believe that this God is still good, and part of what makes that God good is him solving these issues that he is calling God out on, hunger and just suffering. And I think he realizes that God is kind of the same disposition as him, and would probably want to help him. Yeah. Or he is of the disposition to want to help those people, but he realizes the utility of being just one man. You can't fix the entire world, and so
of course
I think
not. Yeah.
because that wasn't an option, that he could never fix everything. He just had to let it go and walk away from it all. And pursue research, perhaps. That research might have been the course he was already on to begin with, and so, seeing like huge humanitarian issues and stuff like that might have been very disheartening because he sees, the obvious need, but to feel perhaps still pulled toward research and seeing all of that stuff, you have this, it's a logical fallacy, to be between a rock and a hard place, to have a false dichotomy, to give yourself two options as the only two options.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps that's kind of what happened to him. He talks about it was just emotions. It was, I can't take this and I can't do anything about it, so I'm going to leave. Where I think an alternate version of David in that case might have said something like, this is horrible, and I am going to go to these places because there's suffering there, and Allah would want me to help them.
Yeah.
And that would have been a way for him to solve this spiritual distress that he was in, seeing the suffering in the world and wanting to blame God for it. A way to avoid blaming God is to say, I recognize that you would want me to help these people in distress, and believe then that God is empowering you to do that. And I think that's kind of what you see in some Christians talking about them having a sense of peace accompanied by a passion for something. I think just kind of that similar desire to provide humanitarian aid to those that you see suffering is something that effect might be found in a Christian example. Somebody feeling a passion from God to help these people and devote all of their energy to that task, while yet feeling peace that in the face of immense difficulty upon arriving in this wherever, they would be backed up by an almighty God in the actual service of those in need.
So you define yourself as an agnostic. Can you just explain a little bit why you chose the word agnostic opposed to atheist?
Alright, so as you already know, I'm a neuroscientist and a mathematician, which kind of gives me some issues. So, to summarize it, math is a form of formal logic, and I truly believe it. So a core concept in logic is that you can never define everything. There will always be at least one thing without a definition. For example, in language, if you're defining words, you'll always have a bunch of undefined words left in the last word that you are defining, or else you'd have to use two words to define each other indirectly. So according to logic, no matter how much it bothers me, I have to accept that there are fundamentals that are logically unknowable, and so I leave space open for God and other things like that, and because I know I can't ever have the answer, but I lean more towards the non-traditional belief in God, so to say.
Can you just expand on what it means to have a non-traditional belief in God?
Let me put it this way. Research is a spiritual quest. That's all. So it's my own version of becoming a pastor. So to me, I'm studying the fundamentals of what makes me me. What are feelings? What does it mean to even feel, and why do things feel? That's what it all really boils down to. The fundamentals of logic even come down to emotions. Just the idea of the ability to feel. So any step I get closer to that core concept, to knowing that truth, is just a path towards spirituality to me. And I happen to get paid for it. So while I can't say I really am sure about anything about gods or things of that nature, such as fourth dimensional beings or what have you, what I am certainly very spiritual about something else. Excuse me, I might have to get a little bit sciencey. Alright, so we usually think of our brains being where our emotions are, right? Well, at least brains or souls, whichever you pick, right? But I consider brains. But it turns out you dig deeper and deeper, and the ability to think and the ability to feel are not necessarily related. And there's no reason that feeling is limited to a brain itself. It's just the fact that my brain feels and my brain can speak to your brain, so I believe your brain feels. That's not saying anything about the feelings of other things. So I think it's most likely that every particle feels, and every group of particle feels. They may not be able to think, speak, or anything of that nature, but they may have current emotions, so to speak. And I'm using that word a little bit loosely. So kind of a deep connection to the universe I'd have. That's different than anything I'd have while being religious.
So you've been diving deeper and deeper into neuroscience with every day, but it seems mystery remains alive and well.
Yep. And sometimes some really ridiculous things pop up that I have a hard time believing, but I just have to try. I have to try and just leave some space open in my head and accept it. That's just what you have to do, right? Oh.
David, I love hearing all about your neuroscience research and everything. Something for me that I found that I see in other people that have spiritual beliefs is this sense that they get their fulfillment from it. And maybe you can relate to this, maybe you find fulfillment in discovering something new or researching something new. But I found that people that have spiritual beliefs, they have the sense of fulfillment because what they're striving for is kind of outside of this world, so it cannot be impacted by anything of this world, which is always really fascinating. That's something, maybe that's why I always keep looking at people with that have religious beliefs, and I kind of want that. But I don't know. Maybe you can tell me how you get your fulfillment through your research and whatnot.
This is the ultimate question, right? How can you feel fulfilled?
Yeah. I guess when you put it like that, it's a pretty daunting question. Maybe a better question for you would be, as a scientist, do you find welling up within you this kind of determination to get your work or get something published in a history book that your kids or your grandkids are going to be reading?
That doesn't even matter to me, really. It's mostly personal. I think leaving a mark on the world is not necessary or important. It may be fun, but not a very important aspect of things.
Hey David, so do you have an idea of what it might be like if you wanted to transition back into the faith?
Sure. Essentially, I think were I to fully commit and go back, I think it would be a very smooth transition, actually. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. Hopefully not ever.
How do you think your family would feel?
Well, I think they would be overjoyed. They still try to ask me every once in a while, hey, it'd be really nice if you prayed once in a while. Not every day or anything, but,
So outside of any prompting from your parents, do you ever find the urge to actually pray for yourself?
Occasionally, yeah, but then I just make sure to tell myself, hey, you don't believe this, don't contradict your damn self and be a man. Although, to be fair, I will pray if someone else asks me to pray for them, but I think that's more of a courtesy.
This section was a hell of a section. He talked about a lot that we should address, that we're going to try to hit on everything. He talked about how neuroscience for him is a spiritual quest. Him discovering how the mind works, how emotions work and everything. He finds that to be a spiritual journey. He says that being a neuroscience is his way of being a pastor, almost. Which, it makes a lot of sense to me, because a core concept of Christianity is you will not know everything about God, but your life goal is to discover as much as you can and learn about the character of God. And I feel like he's doing that, but with just neuroscience. Like, he recognizes that he won't know everything there is to know about the brain. And he even says the brain is almost like a soul. So it's almost like he's bringing it to the spiritual level. And he's saying that, hey, I'm not going to know everything there is to know. And a lot of things surprise me. And even now, like, there are some things in science that like they think are truth, and then they discover something else that almost like contradicts that, and they have to like change. I mean, science, that's like
that's what how science works.
Exactly. So like, I don't know. I found that interesting. I could definitely relate with that, even though I never saw science as something like that as a spiritual journey. But like when he put it like that, it makes a lot of sense. And for me, going through this journey, I don't know if I'm like necessarily looking for this ultimate truth, where I'm almost looking for something that I can believe to be ultimate truth, you know?
Well, from what he said about when he was going back to that one phrase where he describes picking up a pen to take notes about the beauty of God's creation, to worship him in that way. That makes me think that he was in the habit of considering any pursuit of knowledge spiritually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely.
Just no longer doing it for Allah, but doing it for himself.
Yeah, which is fantastic, and I love that. But something that I found that I struggle with is like, I don't know, maybe other people listening struggle with this. I think it's a pretty common thing to struggle with, especially when you're in your like, you know, 20s, mid-20s. Like, you want to feel fulfilled. You're searching, you get out of college and you want a job that's going to leave you feeling like you're making a difference and feeling that sense of fulfillment. And maybe not a job necessarily, but maybe like in a significant other, a partner, or a spouse or something. You're looking for a sense of fulfillment. And to me, I always had this concept that it's like you need to become immortal. And immortal in the sense that you need to leave your mark and everything. And that's kind of...
It's funny. How did you grow up believing that? Because I feel like as a Christian, that's something you would never, ever be taught. That you need to make a mark.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just... I can't go back to a certain point. I don't know. I just have that in me. Like, I have that sense in me.
And what kind of mark are you describing? Like a world-renowned mark? Or just your family would always remember you for having done this? Or your close group of friends? Or perhaps a certain town where you have a bench named after you? That kind of a thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't give you a total answer. I would have to say I would want it to be a world-changing thing. I mean, everybody wants to change the world for better, or some people, I guess, for bad, for worse too. But like, I think that like a world-changing thing would be something that'd be wonderful. I don't know. I just feel like when I look at life being so like you're here today, gone tomorrow. It's like I want to leave something that people will like remember me by, which is like weird. I don't know. It's definitely been something that I've been like going that has been like a driving force in my life, and I don't know who instilled that in me or how that was instilled in me. But nonetheless, it's still something that exists within me, or it has. I've been kind of getting better with it over the past few years. That hasn't been so important, but I know like it would be something that I'd really obsess about. Hearing David say like, yeah, you know, that's not a big deal. Like you were saying, it's like he's doing it for himself. He's doing it, and I just think that that's like a really wonderful thing, and something that I really need to hold on to, like, and really believe that. Like, yeah, like I don't need to worry about whether I'm leaving a mark or not.
Do you think that there is life after death?
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Do you think that it would be an experience congruent with life here, meaning that there wouldn't be a gap in your brain, like you wouldn't have your memory erased or anything like that? Like you would take all these memories there with you, and this would be your starting point for the afterlife.
Yeah, I don't know if an afterlife is Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I would like to think that I take the memories from here to the afterlife, but I don't think the way that I envision an afterlife, I don't see it as like functioning on like this world where there's like you're doing stuff. I almost feel like it's like there's no time or anything. It's just kind of this like I don't know, like I think about it more as like like your consciousness has been like uploaded onto the cloud or something, and you just kind of like exist in this bliss and everything, but you know, it's not really like you're doing.
You don't take actions anymore.
Yeah, I don't see it as you taking actions really.
That's funny. That's that's how I describe, I think, the exact opposite of what I believe the afterlife to be. I guess. I don't know. I definitely believe in timeless experiences. You know, I believe people when they say they were on a DMT trip and it's like time didn't exist. I'll take your word for it. I might not trust you to give me the best explanation of what you mean with those words, but I do believe that based on your experience, time seemed funny and practically seemed like it stopped, or seemed like it was now a thing that was ongoing that you were outside of. Yeah. But yeah, I think the afterlife is going to be shockingly like this. That's my hunch.
Yeah, I would like it to be like that Black Mirror episode. You know, where
I'm terrified. I don't want any Black Mirror episode to be the afterlife.
No, the nice one with the what was it called? It was
the mobile network, like the social network one.
No, the one where the two ladies fall in love and they get married, and the one has been like paralyzed.
Oh yeah, it was like San something.
I want to say San Bernardino, but that's not it.
That is not.
It was Santa Monica. It was
something like that though.
Anyway, yeah, like something like that where like your consciousness is there, so you have the memories of the past life, and is that what you're talking about? The afterlife to kind of be like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a lot nicer than the way that I think about it, as just like your consciousness is
the way
just
you
like
think about it. It makes sense that you would want to leave a mark on the world because there isn't anything this world is actually giving you in that afterlife.
Yeah, so maybe that's
to me. I don't need to leave a mark because I'm having everything I'm taking with me in my mind to the afterlife.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for us for this episode. Thank you for everyone for tuning in and listening. We both really, really appreciate it. We did have a lot more that we couldn't fit in. Otherwise, this probably would have been like a 3-hour podcast, and it would have been just way too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to be releasing mini-sodes throughout these next coming weeks of just all the other stuff that we discussed and everything. So to be on top of that and to make sure that you don't miss anything, make sure that you subscribe to us. We have a YouTube channel called the No Faith in Humanity podcast. We should be on any platform that you get your podcasts at. Hopefully, if we're not, let us know, and you can let us know by emailing us at nfih.podcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook, also called the No Faith in Humanity podcast. And we're hoping that we can get this community together and kind of having a discussion and everything about all these topics, because we both find everything that we discuss incredibly interesting, but we'd love to know what you guys think about it. So feel free to shoot us an email. Feel free to join the Facebook page and start a discussion or something on maybe something that you heard that we might have missed. But yes, we appreciate everything. And until next time, stay safe and peace be with you.
Do you still ever go to a mosque?
Occasionally, every other holiday, maybe once a year I'll go at best.
So if we go together one day, what are we gonna do?
Say hi to the necessary people and leave right away.